On today's show, I talk with Dallas Stars beat writer Sam Nestler to talk all things Dallas Stars training camp. We'll talk about what things look like under new head coach Pete DeBoer, talk about some of the interesting line groupings and defensive pairings that they saw on day one, and of course, talk about when we can expect Jason Robertson to be reunited with the Stars, all coming up on this Friday episode of Locked On Stars.
Your Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. Welcome back to the Locked On Stars podcast, the only daily podcast covering the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Dane Lewis, your local expert on all things Dallas Stars hockey, credentialed member of the Dallas Stars media, coming to you on this Friday, September 23rd. And whether this is your first time here or you are a recurring listener, thank you for stopping by today's episode and for making Locked On Stars your first listen every single day. If you're new to the show, please do consider hitting the subscribe button on YouTube. Help us get to 1,000 subscribers by the start of 2023. You can also find and follow us on your favorite podcasting platform. Give us a follow and rating there as well. And you can also find and follow Locked On Stars on social media, just at Locked On Stars on Twitter and Instagram. And you can find my personal Twitter account at Dane_Lewis. But let's go ahead and jump now to a conversation with Dallas Stars beat writer Sam Nestler, who was kind enough to join us to give us a little bit of insight what has gone on during the first day of Stars training camp, because I'm still here in the Metroplex, some things with work and things of that nature keeping me here in Dallas, which is good and dandy, but thankfully we have guys like Sam kind enough to take some time to give us some insight to what went down day one of Dallas Stars training camp. So let's get to that conversation right now. All right, joining me now on the show, a recurring guest, friend of the Locked On Stars podcast, has some pretty big news as far as how he's covering the Dallas Stars, but he is a Dallas Stars beat writer. You guys probably know who he is if you've been listening to the show for a while. Mr. Sam Nestler. Sam, how's it going? I know you are on site for Stars training camp. How does it feel to be in a hockey environment and to officially have hockey back?
It's great. The energy around the rink is fantastic. I'd say the only thing that doesn't feel like hockey is walking into the rink at 100 degrees and getting into a freezing cold rink and vice versa. So, but it's great to be back. I missed it. It was a long summer.
Yeah, it really was. It feels, like the Stanley Cup Finals was forever ago, and, we even had free agency in the draft, but even those feel like distant memories. So really exciting to, have players reporting for camp, even if it's not the entire Dallas Stars team. I know we're still waiting on news for Jason Robertson and waiting for him to rejoin the team, but all in all, really good to have Stars hockey back. And normally at the end, I want to let people plug their information, but I know you have some pretty big stuff going on as far as how you're covering this team. I just want to give you a moment to give the folks at home a little bit of information in case they don't know about Dallas Hockey Now and who you're working with and what all you guys are doing.
Yeah. So brand new in the last few weeks, I got brought on as the beat writer for Dallas Hockey Now. So I'll be the primary beat writer, and Bruce Levine, the radio guy, will be kind of helping me out with some columns here and there. So National Hockey Now is a big, I think they have 17 cities now, but they're expanding, hoping to get 25 by the end of this year. Tons Hall of Fame writers, some really, really well-known guys in the industry. So check them out, nationalhockeynow.com. And then our site is Dallas Hockey Now. So we'll be covering all season. It's going to be really exciting because it's more of a beat writer, more articles, more exposure, more time. It's really exciting. So looking forward to the year.
Absolutely. That's awesome stuff, and really excited to see what you and Bruce put together. Bruce certainly does know his hockey, and I know many people know him from, listening, like you said, on the radio, doing some Dallas Stars, pregame and even in the middle of the game as well as postgame, pretty much every single Dallas Stars game. So really, really good stuff there. But now diving into some of the specifics on Dallas Stars training camp. What was kind of the overall vibe as far as the team and just the way that, practice was run? We obviously have not just a new head coach, but almost an entirely new coaching staff here with the Dallas Stars under Pete DeBoer. And I know you've seen your fair share of Dallas Stars, practices, training sessions, what have you. And just, we've seen the past few years how this team has been run under Rick Bowness. Was there anything that really stood out or seemed different after one day of camp in a Pete DeBoer led Dallas Stars world, or did things seem to kind of be not too different?
They were very different. From the first 20 minutes of the first session, the pace was crazy fast. I mean, it was within the drills, after you're done with the drill, between drills, he was slamming his stick on the ice, hurry, 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 all the time. So we noticed, and he spoke about it afterwards as well, how he prefers short, fast-paced practices, game speed, executing at game speed, which I think is great because the league has been moving towards faster and more goals, more activation, and the Stars kind of lagged behind in that anyway. So I think practicing at that speed for them is going to be super helpful. So the pace was super noticeable. Everybody was super excited. So that's kind of the feeling every time. Everyone on the ice and off the ice is very excited to be back, but it really did feel like there was a lot of energy compared to maybe previous seasons. So it was exciting all around. And the players, speaking to them afterwards, everyone's excited about what opportunities. There's a lot of unknown, and I think they're excited about that after some, up and down the last couple of years and a lot of criticism.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and I know this is something that DeBoer touched on going into camp. I know at Media Day talking about kind of a blank slate for everybody. And I think the Stars, maybe a lot of teams are in need of it just with what's happened over the past several years, not just as far as hockey, but, so many different things happening that are out of people's controls with the pandemic and, just looking at the NHL with the 2021 season, that condensed schedule, kind of realignment. The Dallas Stars especially have just, you have a coach get fired right before that pandemic hits. You go into the bubble, you have a great run, but you come out of it injured and you're shorthanded, and then you basically have to start the next season up right after. And all things considered, I think the Stars did pretty well with the hand they were dealt, but now it feels like this is kind of the first regular season in a while, like that we're going into it where things are somewhat normal. And I think that that's going to be great for this team. And I really like that approach from Pete DeBoer to, and as far as I know, he didn't contact too many players in between getting hired and now training camp just to, not have any bias towards them before, these on ice sessions. He wants to be able to evaluate the players with a fresh perspective, which I think will be beneficial for him and the team. Just like we've said, get that fresh start. Were there anything on the ice that really stood out to you as far as, personnel? I know they were probably running several different, pairings. I know that's a more duo word, but even with the lines, you have three guys out there at a time. Was there anything that really stood out to you there? Obviously, there's going to be a lot of shifting and movement during the preseason and during training camp, but were there any trios or duos that really stood out to you on the ice?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, they did start with Miro Heiskanen on the right side with Suter, which was pretty much what it was all last season. So we kind of take that with a grain of salt because obviously the defensemen are split up into all three groups. But it was noticeable that it looked like they at least picked one pair that they thought would be, what they wanted to move forward with, at least for the preseason. But as far as forward lines go, each group had a really interesting line. So Jamie Benn actually skated on the wing with Radek Faksa and Wyatt Johnston, which was kind of a cool, unique look. A couple guys looking for more offense and supposedly an elite playmaker who could create offense for them. So that one was cool. And then Mason Marchment skated with Rope Hintz and Dennis Gurianov, which I thought was an awesome line. Despite, even if Jason Robertson, when he does come back, I still think that's a really cool line that they should explore. Kind of gives that the two speedsters and then gives them the grit and the toughness. Just seems like fast, heavy hockey, which could be really productive for them. And DeBoer actually spoke about that. That was the one line he brought up after camp where, he kind of mentioned throwing guys together and seeing what sticks. But that line really stuck out to him as something that could be a potential down the line. And then the first group had a line of Jacob Peterson, Tyler Seguin, and Joe Pavelski. So that was another good trio that I liked a lot. It seemed like the groups in green were like the top line, those three groups there. And it seemed like all of them really clicked. Obviously, they're not scrimmaging. They're not playing, game situations, but they moved the puck well. It looked like they they were able to create some chemistry, and I was really excited about a couple of those trios.
Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. Find all of the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts. BetOnline is also your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite sports and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action happening around the sports world. BetOnline.net is where the game starts. Yeah, that all sounds really intriguing, and I think that there's just been this thought that naturally the Stars would hold on to that, Hintz, Robertson, Pavelski top line, regardless of what changes get made over the offseason, but maybe it's one of those things where if a line does well in camp or even does well in some preseason games that you look to change things up, because as good as that line was, when they originated a couple seasons ago and then all throughout last year, you think about the idea of maybe having one of those guys maybe being on a second line, and I think that potentially boosts the opportunity for secondary scoring, as well as, opening up the game of guys like Mason Marchment, Dennis Gurianov, Jacob Peterson, getting more guys involved, because I think that was one of the Stars' biggest issues last year was you had those three guys, and then the rest of the scoring was a question mark night in and night out. So I think that's really good news to hear, and you talk about the defensive pairings, a new defenseman in town with the Dallas Stars and Nils Lundkvist. A deal goes down earlier this week on Monday. We get him from the New York Rangers for a few draft picks, some conditional draft picks. What were your overall thoughts on that deal? And then, what have your thoughts been on Lundkvist so far as media interactions, as well as I believe he did spend some time on the ice today, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yep, he did. He showed up today. First, when the trade happened, I was very excited, and I was almost looking for a reason not to be excited, which is kind of what's happened with the Stars as a fan or as a writer covering the team over the last few years. It just seems like whether it's actually a negative or we make it out to be a negative, there just hasn't been a lot of positivity surrounding this club. So I almost looked for a reason not to be excited. And then I was looking at it, and the way Nil explained it was perfect. Yes, they gave up a first-round pick in a very deep draft class, but they truly believe that he is past his developmental stage. So the way Nil put it was, whoever we draft next year is realistically 3 to 4 years away from being NHL ready, if not more. And you don't know how it'll pan out. They believe that he's ready. So giving up a first-round pick, New York was actually asking for one of their prospects, one of their big prospects, which is off the table. So Nil kind of found a way to say, we'll give you a first-round pick in this deep draft class. And that was kind of the two desperate teams finding a way to make a deal. But I think it's a great trade. I think that the team really, truly believes that he is not only capable of being an NHL player, but in a couple of years being a top pair along with Miro Heiskanen. And tell me that if he turns out to be anywhere near John Klingberg's skill, because he gets compared to John Klingberg a lot with his offensive ability, Miro and Lundkvist would just be a super dynamic and pretty responsible top pairing for Dallas. So I was very excited about it. In terms of today, he did get here. Crazy travel for him. He came from Stockholm. He went from Stockholm to New York to Austin. I should have asked his total travel time, because it's got to be crazy. But he didn't get here till 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning this morning. Skated this morning, so he mentioned he was a bit tired, but just kind of trying to get through the day. But he looked good. He's a very quick guy, lots of speed, always has his head up, looking to make passes and make plays. And one of the things they did a lot in practice today was breakouts and the idea of transitioning quickly. So whether it's breaking out of your own zone or just a defenseman picking up a loose puck in the neutral zone, it was like touch the puck and head turn, flipped around, puck up the ice immediately. So he was really good at that. I think that fits in really well with what Pete DeBoer is trying to do. And it was just great to see him out on the ice, and the prospect of what he could be is super exciting. So I'm not saying that's going to happen this year, but if he can even make the NHL and build slowly up into maybe getting in that top four and solidifying it a bit, I think it's a great trade.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a deal that can work out for both parties. I think the Rangers get their draft capital and the Stars potentially get a guy who can help replace that production. Like you said, he maybe won't be, able to produce, especially this season, like a John Klingberg, but you have Miro Heiskanen, and then everyone else just kind of seems like we don't really know what we're going to get. Ryan Suter is, not the player that he once was. He still is able to contribute, but, he just, as any player ages, they're going to regress a little bit. And then even guys like Esa Lindell, Joel Hanley, you're not entirely sure what we're getting this season, but I think that that's a really nice addition. Not too much NHL experience, but New York City is a very difficult place to play professional sports. So I imagine even those, I believe he only has 25 games of NHL experience under his belt. That's probably about worth maybe 50 or so games here in Texas. The crowd, obviously very passionate here in Dallas, but anyone who's, watched a New York team or followed them knows how intense and how much they love their teams, and the expectations are so high there. So hopefully a clean slate for him as well to kind of, join a team that is needing defensive depth. And staying on the defenseman side of things, Thomas Harley obviously has a lot of expectations coming into this season. What did he look like at camp today, and what are your expectations for him going into this season? Where do you see him being as far as, the defensive lineup, and who do you think he would fit best playing alongside?
Yeah, he actually looks like a different player over the past, today, and when we've spoken to him over the summer. He seems very confident. I think he knows that this is his shot to be a real full-time NHL player. And he fits well with DeBoer, just like Lundkvist does, just like Heiskanen does. He likes to push the pace. He likes to take risks, and he's developing his defensive game to balance that out. So I think that he's got a lot of potential. I see them giving him a chance in the top four, at least to start the year. Maybe Lundkvist makes his way up there. Maybe he plays next to Hakanpää to start. Maybe Miller makes his way in there and he plays down a little bit lower. But I really think that if you're looking at their depth on defense, he's the most likely to be in the top four, because they kind of have that top 2 to 3, and then the other guys are right on the line there. I think, Miro and Esa are top 4 guys guaranteed. Suter is still potentially one, struggled a bit last year, but still plays the heavy minutes, so he can still do it. But then you got the Hakanpää, Hanley, Miller, and Lundkvist, and I don't know if they want to throw any of those guys into top 4. Hakanpää, I don't think is a top 4 guy. Miller, I don't think is a long-term top 4 guy, and Lundkvist, we just don't know. So I could see him playing in the top 4 on that second pairing, but I think he really could fit in anywhere. I think that it's cool to have such a blend of really heavy defensive guys, Hakanpää, Lindell, Suter, and the offensive fluid players that they have as well. So the one really interesting thing that we talked about a lot in the press box today is with DeBoer really wanted to push the pace. And by the way, he talked about it, wanting to push the pace, get the defense involved. He certainly backed up what he talked about today at practice. They had defensemen flying up the ice. They had defensemen pushing the center lane all the way to the net on the rush. And I think it'll be interesting to watch. A lot of these players do that easily, Miro and Lundkvist and those guys. What will Hakanpää and Suter do in that system? Because I don't know that you can just have them hang all the way back as a defensive guy and not be able to push that pace, because then it's like, okay, these guys are out here right now. We don't have to worry about them, which kind of defeats the purpose of the system. So it'll be interesting to see that. But as far as Harley goes, I think that his upside is obviously very high. I think that they've been high on him for a long time. It feels like he's been a prospect for them for like 20 years, honestly. The talks ever since the Honka situation, it feels like Harley's been the name on defense. So I'd be really excited. I hope they give him a chance. It seems like DeBoer is a little more open to younger players stepping into big roles. So I think he'll get a good chance on the top 4.
Yeah, it makes me really excited to hear that we're seeing these defensemen, at least one day into camp, being used a lot more as far as the rush opportunities, and just hopefully that'll lead to seeing them more involved offensively. I know that's kind of something that's been attached to DeBoer's name over the years, is getting his defensemen involved in all aspects of the game. I mean, we've seen guys like Brent Burns have some of the best seasons of their career in San Jose under Pete DeBoer. And so I think that that's exciting, not just for Miro Heiskanen, but for Lundkvist, for Harley, Suter, Esa Lindell, so on and so forth. And the Stars, I think, have also done a good job to, it might not work out perfectly or come all together this season, but I think they've, started the process of trying to build a solid and serviceable defensive core. It might not be the flashiest names outside of Heiskanen, but I think that they've certainly, by going out and getting Lundkvist and Miller and still holding on to guys like Lindell and Suter, building guys that you can work with and guys that you can make, serviceable and competent pairs with that can go out night in and night out and give you solid minutes. And then given, what we've seen and heard about Pete DeBoer coming into Dallas, it looks like we can see some good production from them alongside the good production that we should be getting from the forwards as well.
It seems like everyone's very aware that that's what they want to do this year. Lindell talked about shooting the puck a lot more this year. He also joked, I asked him if he was going to shoot anywhere besides 5-hole today, and he laughed and said he's been working on other spots. So he's been shooting the puck more and trying to get more training in the summer. Instead of training as a defender, he kind of trains a little bit as a hybrid to develop that side. Jamie Benn talked about his main focus this summer was just to get faster so he can keep up with the pace of these young, speedy guys. So, you hear the term buy-in a lot when it comes to, especially with a new coach. It's early. It's been one day, but I sense that around this team. And that's really, really refreshing after a long time of back and forth and up and down.
Yeah. And I think you have to factor in like the veteran leaders on the team really being now, Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin, and Joe Pavelski. Although he's not a long tenured Dallas Star, he's a long tenured NHL player who has that connection with Pete DeBoer. And I think that adds a whole new element to DeBoer trusts Joe and probably also trusts the other veterans on the team to, lead by example, set the example for the entire locker room. And then as a result, they'll likely buy into what Pete DeBoer has for them, which is just really exciting to think about to, see this team unified. Not that they weren't under Rick Bowness. I think Rick Bowness was a fantastic coach as far as controlling the locker room and working and getting to know his players, but it's just different. And it's a change of scenery for everyone, it seems. But I kind of want to shift focus to Jake Cottinger, who had, a busy offseason, at least in our minds, amongst Stars fans and people that follow this team, because we weren't entirely sure what it would look like for him to come back. Would it be a longer term deal, a shorter deal? But he does come back with a deal that I think works out for both sides. And obviously at camp, it's kind of odd because you're like, the goalies don't seem to do as much as the skill players. But what did Jake Cottinger look like today? And if there was any media availability, how excited was he, to run it back with this team? And did you guys get to talk to him about being seemingly the official number one goalie? What is the situation like with Jake Cottinger?
Yeah, we didn't speak to him today. We're going to talk to him tomorrow after his session. I believe he's in Group A.
Okay.
But he looked very business-like, if that makes sense. He's approaching this as a business. I need to show up every day, every moment. And that's one of the things that I've loved about Jake Cottinger since the moment that he became, even before he was in the NHL, when he was just a prospect. I know that he was like this at BU as well. He's always been one of the most mentally strong players in any locker room that he's been in. Jamie Benn mentioned that he's already a leader on this team, and the fact that he's 23 years old and he's already a leader in the group, especially the Stars group that has so many 20-year almost veterans. It's pretty exciting to see that he's doing that. But he looks professional, and I think that the biggest thing for him is that he always wants to get better. I mean, after his incredible, 64 save game in Game 7 against Calgary, the first thing he says was, I can get better. And I know I want to get better to get my team past the first round and into the further rounds. And this summer when he signed that deal, we spoke to him, and that's all he was talking about. We kept trying to get things out of him about the deal or about other situations. And all he wanted to stick to was, I'm trying to get better. My only goal is to get our team to the playoffs and get our team a chance to win the Stanley Cup. So he's ready, at least mentally. That doesn't necessarily translate to on the ice play always. But I'll say this, if there's any preparation that he could do, he'll do it. He's the first one on the ice. He was the first one on the ice today, again, just like he always was last year. And I think that he's just such a mentally strong player. So freakishly athletic. I think that it's going to be a really big year for him, and I really think he's going to respond.
Yeah, it's really exciting to hear that he's got the mental side of things seemingly on lockdown. I mean, that's half the battle with being a professional athlete, especially a goalie in the NHL. The mental side is really challenging. It's equally, if not more challenging than the physical side, but I think we've seen the physical gifts are there with Jake and his willingness to put in the work, and I'm excited for him to get to build on his playoff performance, because I think that was kind of his official, coming out to the NHL world of, hey, Jake Ottinger's here, and it's not just a one flash in the pan, really nice 7-game stretch in the playoffs. He's here to be a consistent, dominant goalie in the league. So that's really exciting to hear, that he's ready to go and ready to be the head guy this season, because that is a lot of pressure, especially for a club that over the past, handful of seasons has had really solid goalie play with Ben Bishop, Anton Hudobin, and then even a guy like Scott Wedgwood, who has come in and provided some great backup minutes last season to Jake, and we get him back as well. Really exciting to think about. And a couple more things I want to touch on before we move on. Some of the kids on the roster, and you've talked about some of them already with Wyatt Johnston, Logan Stankoven, Maverick Bork, plenty of names to talk about as far as prospects and guys who haven't seen the NHL yet, and even a few who have, but have mainly spent the majority of their careers at the AHL level or with their junior clubs. Who are some guys that stood out today and guys overall that you're excited to watch for the rest of camp and throughout the preseason, whether it be, the Johnston, Stankovens, Borks of the world, or are there some other under the radar type people that you're excited about that maybe other people might not know their names yet?
Yeah, it's tough to see how well they perform in these type of practices. You just kind of look at what their shot looks like, how confident are they with the puck, what's their speed with the puck and without it. But Johnston definitely looked very good. Ben spoke about it afterwards. He said it's so much fun to play with him. He's never afraid to make a play. He's always got his head up. He said he's years past or years above his age or whatever, well past where he should be at the age that he's at, which is great to hear. I mean, that's coming from the captain and a longtime veteran in the NHL. So he was great. I think that he has a lot to prove because he wasn't as dominant as people thought he would be at Traverse City. So I think that he has a lot to prove. Stankoven, I think, impresses me the most every time I see him. He just seems to stick out. Like a lot of guys will stick out in certain situations, and then maybe they disappear a little bit here and there. I've never not been able to find Stankoven in a practice session, Traverse City, development camp, whatever it is. He's scoring goals. He's making plays. He works so incredibly hard. So I really want to see how he does when they start getting to games here on Monday, which, by the way, is insane that preseason is already on Monday. Things are moving so quickly. But the one that's interesting is Maverick Bork, because I don't think people really know about him. They know that he's one of the big three, but the big three is almost like the big two and Maverick Bork. It seems like there's a different little gap there, at least in the fans' eyes. So I'm interested to see what he does over this next few days and into the preseason, because he arguably has a better chance to make the team since he doesn't have to go back to juniors. He could play in the AHL, so he can hang around. He can jump up and down, and it's a little less pressure to make the team or bust. It's kind of he can be there, he can learn, and he can kind of grow in it. But other than those big three, Matej, we learned today, is Matej Blumel is how you say his name. Just more confusing pronunciation of names. So we wanted to make sure on this one. But Matej he scored 4 goals in Traverse City. He had a hat trick in the third game. And he just seems like one of those players that never gets overwhelmed. Kind of like Bork when he played in the AHL, in 2020. You just don't get overwhelmed when the situation grows and you're playing with bigger players and you're playing in a higher level of game. So he's a goal scorer, and as the Stars need goal scorers. So it'll be fun to see if he's able to kind of chip in there. And then the two that really stick out to me are Riley Damiani and Ty Delandria. I think that Ty Delandria's time is now. I think he is going to be on the roster when the season starts. He just fills so many boxes. He's the perfect blend now of, he was very defensive and his goal scoring struggled because he was forced to play when he wasn't ready. Then they sent him back down, and he developed leagues above where he was in terms of goal scoring and playmaking. So I think his playmaking ability mixed with how responsible he is defensively, how hard he works in the corners and winning battles, and how physical he is, I think he'll be on the roster. And it's been fun to watch him, kind of play he looks like a different player. He really does than he did a couple of years ago when he was on that COVID shortened season team. And the other guy, Riley Damiani, he was the player of the tournament. He led the whole tournament in points. He looked next level of the other players. And that's kind of what we wanted to see from the Stankovens and the Johnstons at that tournament. Riley Damiani did it. He wasn't just, getting lucky and scoring and rebound goals and things like that. He was scoring a bunch of different types of goals. He was not afraid to take chances. He was shooting the puck, controlled it a lot, made a bunch of really nice small plays on the boards, things like that. So I think those guys are going to be fun to watch. And he's obviously, him and Delandria could go down to the AHL as well. So there's kind of a group here. You got the two young guys that have to go back to junior if they don't make it, and then you got the group that will be there in the AHL. And it's going to be interesting to see how the coaching staff and the organization and management approaches that. Nils said, we're not going to worry about that. The best player is going to stay, whether he has to go back to juniors or not. But in the back of your head, you kind of always think, well, if Delandria is equal with a Johnston, how do you choose a guy who is younger, has no experience, and could go back to junior over a guy who's been paying his dues, has the experience, is more physical, and is older? So that's kind of going to be what to watch for with those prospects.
Yeah, it's almost really a good problem to have all of these really talented forwards on the roster that, could potentially make the team, because it's going to bring the best out of everyone at camp, and the competition, as if it's not already high enough, is going to be raised even more with guys like that. So Delandria especially has really caught my eye and been on my mind as of late, because he came in and played some really nice minutes in that Game 7 against the Flames, which is not easy to do for a guy that doesn't have a ton of NHL experience, to come into a hostile environment, win or go home game for your team. And he played really well. And so I think that alongside his performance in the AHL this past season really has, helped him take steps forward, like you said. And the last thing, we got to talk about it before you go, because it is the elephant in the room with the Dallas Stars. Jason Robertson not at camp right now. Expected that he hopefully will rejoin the team sometime in the near future. What are your thoughts on the entire situation? What do you think a deal potentially looks like for him, and how much longer do you think he'll be separated from the team, if you were to just take a guess?
Yeah, it's got to be. Nils said that he's not worried about panicking, and I wanted to kind of be like, are you sure though? Because this is your leading scorer. This is your future. This is possibly your future captain. There's a lot that rides on this, and not saying they're not going to sign him eventually, but you don't want to take any risks of anything happening with his development, anything happening, that might lead him to another situation. So the interesting thing that Nils said the other day is they feel comfortable right now with the cap space they have to sign him. So he wouldn't mention what is holding things up. He wouldn't really get into the actual negotiations. But the fact that he says they feel comfortable with the money they have right now kind of confuses me, because if they're comfortable with the money they have now, that means that he's asking for the money they have now, which means what's the holdup and what's going on? Is it that they're battling over a bridge deal or a long-term? Jim Nils also said that he's comfortable with either. So it's tough to read those, because obviously the GM is going to be very vague and on purpose, and he should be, about these type of contract things. But I think the deal gets done. It's hard to say when, but I would say you get a few preseason games in. It's tough to think that if you're Nils, you're not folding a little bit and making the deal happen, because you'd hate to see him miss the whole preseason. You hate to see him miss any games. It just puts a damper on the season, and you have so many high expectations. You have so much energy and excitement, new coach, new players. It would stink to have them just come out and not have one of their best players on the ice on opening night. So I really don't know what the holdup is. I think that we kind of know what he's looking for in terms of money, comparing it to the Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas type of deals. So I think it's going to happen. I almost feel like they're in one of those stalemates where it's like one little thing is not being agreed upon, and they're both seeing who breaks first. And not Robertson. I'm sure he's dying to get down here. I think that his agent is working hard to get him what he deserves, and he deserves to get paid. So I don't want, nobody wants him to take something that's lower than he deserves, because he definitely deserves it. But I think a deal gets done here before it gets too long, because nobody wants that damper, especially Jason Robertson. And they need the Jason Robertson from last year. They don't need he's training, but he's not training with the team. He's not around the team. He's not playing games. So it's a very different thing. So I think maybe get a week or so from now, things get a little bit more panicky, and I think a deal gets done.
Yeah, it's a situation that once it finally comes to an end, and whenever that deal does come with the team, that I think everyone can just take a breath of fresh air. The fans, the other players on the team, the coaching staff. I know that's probably a huge draw for Pete DeBoer. And he's even talked about how excited he is to get to coach a player like Jason Robertson with that ability. So, and even the front office, it probably takes a little bit of a burden off them as well to get this franchise cornerstone type player back with the team, back practicing with them to get prepared mentally and physically for these games. So it's something that, we're still holding out on, but it's, with every day that passes, we're getting closer. We don't know when it is, but the deal is coming.
What's funny is actually the Stars have been stuck in the mud in at least one way for so long, whether it was the Ben Bishop situation, the Anton Hudobin injury, the Tyler Seguin injury, then the John Klingberg, all of the talks the last 2 years of John Klingberg, where he's going to go. So it's like so badly, this franchise just wants to be free and it's not this, and this, but it's just this, and this. It's all positive. It's all excited. So I think everybody within the organization wants that. And that's why I really think it's going to happen soon, because it's got to feel like that. If it feels like that to us, it's got to feel like that to them.
Absolutely. And it's, we get this done with Jason Robertson, and then we get to do it all over again next offseason with Rope Hintz, unless they can get him a deal done in the season. I know that's a possibility as well, but that feels like a toss up, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But Sam, thank you for coming on today's episode. Always good to talk Stars hockey with you, and we'll have to have you on sometime during the season, if not multiple times during the season.
Yeah, absolutely, Dane. Always happy to do it. Thanks for having me on here.
Again, a huge thank you to Sam for coming on today's episode and giving us a sneak peek into what has been going on at Stars training camp. Maybe some of you have even been at camp, or maybe you're going today or tomorrow, which is exciting. Hope you guys enjoy it. And then, of course, we have our first preseason game on Monday. The next time you hear a new episode of Locked On Stars will be the same day that we have the first Dallas Stars game day of this new season. Although it's not the regular season, it's still going to be exciting. You can go to the game. It will be at the American Airlines Center against the St. Louis Blues. But thank you guys for tuning into today's episode of Locked On Stars, for making us your first listen of the day. Hit subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Hit the follow button on your favorite podcasting platform. Leave us a 5-star rating or review if you like what you hear. You can also find and follow us on social media at Locked On Stars on Instagram and Twitter, as well as at Dane_Lewis, my personal Twitter account. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Hope you enjoy your weekend, whether you're at Stars training camp, whether you're just going to sit on the couch and watch football, you're spending time with family, whatever you're doing. I hope you enjoy it. Enjoy yourself. And then we'll be back here on Monday to talk more about what's gone on at Stars training camp, as well as take a look at the first Dallas Stars preseason game of 2022. Have a great weekend, Stars fans. We'll see you back here on Monday.